Thursday, March 4th, 2025 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. We'll do a attendance roll call. Woody Chittick,
Present.
Lee Darst,
Present.
Michael Dickey,
Here.
Charlie Higginson,
Here.
David McMorris,
Here.
Matt Watkins here. We have all members present tonight. For members of the public, we're having the meeting via Zoom. If you do have any questions pertaining to any of the applications, each application will have a public comment session. So please either utilize the chat function to put your information in, or you can raise your hand and Julia will promote you to speak. The first item of business tonight is a continued hearing for a use variance at 149 King Street. We want to bring forward the applicant's reps.
Okay, Matt, while we're doing that, I do have one quick administrative issue. I did get an email from town council. Apparently this came up with a different board, but she thought that we should pay attention to it as well. We always do our hearings, everyone participates, and in special permits, everyone votes. In variances and appeals from the building inspector's decisions, the permanent members vote because it has to be a unanimous vote. But she did point out that if we had a situation with a special permit where one of the full members voted yes, 2 voted no, and the 3 associate members voted yes, it could create some questions. So I think the best thing, I think it's important for everyone to be able to discuss everything. I think it's important for everyone to be able to vote, but I would suggest that we change the voting order a little bit on special permits so that the full members vote first, the associate members vote second. And if we do get one that comes up 1 to 2, we'll stop the vote at that point and it'll be denied. Other than that, on administrative matters and any other special permit issues, I think everyone should participate fully and vote. And I think everyone should participate fully in every hearing, no matter what it's for. How does
That's on I think you may have said special permit, but that's for a variance, right? That you're referring.
No,
On
first.
a variance, we should
Well,
vote in a different order because it's
No,
3.
well, in a variance and an appeal from the building inspector's decisions, only the full members vote because it has to be a unanimous vote.
right.
In special permits, I think we need to do the full members first in the event that we have a 1 to 2 vote. Because technically only the full members votes will count if there's an appeal. So just to make the record clear, I think it's best to do the full members first.
Okay, understood.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just interject, Dave, I think for everything, let's follow that rule for everything. The full members vote first, and then the 3 of us associates can chime in as appropriate.
Okay, sounds good. All right, sorry to interrupt, but gave Adam a chance to get his throat cleared.
Yeah, Adam, before you do kick off, I'll just note, since our last hearing, we received some different materials that were submitted, including 2 different case law references and some information that included a soil morphology report. So if you want to, update us on those items as well, after you introduce yourself, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Adam Brodsky and I represent the applicant PSI Atlantic Acquisition 8 LLC. Ms. Gillis, could you please promote Luke Mitchell from VHB, Chad Ingram from Ingram Engineering, as well as Greg Morse from Morse Engineering, please?
Yes.
You have the full complement this evening. And I'll introduce everyone. So Jesse Morgan Senior Vice President with PSI. And you've heard from Dan Ketches, professional engineer with VHB and our project engineer. And we've invited this evening Luke Mitchell, who is an urban planner with VHB, Chad Ingram, another professional engineer with Ingram Engineering Services, Inc., which is a geotechnical firm. And you know Mr. Morse, a professional registered engineer with Morse Engineering. And Mr. Watkins, thank you for the introduction. Yes, we did provide the additional cases that you requested, as well as to confirm that those trial court decisions were not appealed. And the board asked for additional information supporting a finding that our property contains unique conditions which do not affect the zoning district generally, and that these unique conditions restrict development and make it economically not feasible to redevelop the property for other uses within the zoning district. And those are the documents that you refer to, the soil morphology report from IES, several Natural Resource Conservation Service NRCS soil maps and supporting information, as well as a memorandum from VHB. I'll briefly give you the order of the presentation and just touch upon what we hope to address this evening. First, I'm going to ask Dan Ketches to address topography. And again, reassure the zoning board that the topographic conditions on the site are unique, not generally found in the zoning district. And then ask Chad Ingram to explain the unique soil conditions on the site, and again, to explain why those conditions are not generally found in the district. And he's also going to explain how those unique conditions restrict redevelopment, except for the proposed self-storage use. I'm then going to ask Greg Morse to share his local knowledge to confirm this information based upon his hands-on experience in Cohasset and in the zoning district with designing and permitting of projects. Then we're going to ask Luke Mitchell to address the allowed uses in the zoning district and how these unique conditions and constraints make these uses, again, not feasible in the zoning district. And then lastly, ask Jesse Morgan to tie everything together. And I'm just going to remind you very briefly, because we have a presentation to make, just of the target here, and that we've presented, I believe, credible and comprehensive evidence establishing each of the three elements for the grant of a variance. First, circumstances relating to soil condition, shape, or topography affecting our property, but not affecting generally the zoning district. Second, that literal enforcement of the zoning bylaw would involve substantial hardship to PSI in several respects. First, PSI will not be able to reasonably use the property for purposes or in a manner allowed by zoning. Second, that given these unique circumstances, that is not economically feasible or likely that the property will be developed in the future for a permitted use. And third, that PSI's hardship here is inherently involves the weighing of equitable considerations, which we've addressed at previous hearings. And lastly, the relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good. Again, I'm not going to speak about this in great detail, other than to remind the board that the purposes of the Cohasset zoning bylaw include conserving land value and preventing blight, and simply remind the board that town meeting was explicitly told that the former technology business district yielded two projects: the extra storage facility that was built at 81 King Street, and I'm quoting, a new one that just got permitted, and remind the board that this project received site plan approval and a stormwater permit without any opposition to that. So respectfully suggest that actually denial of a variance here would be inconsistent with the purposes of the zoning bylaw. And I'd argue, contrary to the intent of town meeting, which thought that it was getting two self-storage buildings in Cohasset. So with that, I'm going to ask Dan to begin the presentation. Thank you.
To Adam and members of the board. For the record, my name is Dan Ketches. I'm a civil engineer with VHB. Following up from our last meeting, VHB prepared the graphic you can hopefully see here to provide some additional information regarding the topography on our project site and how that relates to the zoning district in general. So what you can see is the blue outline represents the 3A commercial district boundary, and the gradation of color hatches represents the average slope across each lot within or partially within the district. The darker green is flattest and the darkest red is the steepest. We've used the average grade to characterize each lot individually. It's a better indication of the ability to develop than just showing the contours as the previous figures did. The more topography there is on a site means there's more significant earthwork costs, more significant challenges associated with balancing cut and fill, limiting the soil export from the site, as well as providing vehicular access from the roadway. On a smaller lot such as 149 King Street, it becomes even harder to make up those grades with steep slopes and retaining walls while still maintaining an economically viable development. So as you can see from the colors here, there are only 5 other parcels within the entire zoning district which have an average slope comparable to what exists on the project site. So it's clearly a unique condition when we look at the zoning district in general. In addition, the 2 red parcels shown here, we understand are currently being developed, but that the development was only feasible through the use of an off-site septic system provided on an adjacent parcel, and that those sites would have otherwise been unfeasible to develop. By the numbers, approximately 4% of the area in the entire district has an average grade of 12.5% or greater. Conversely, over 90% of the district has an average grade of 5% or below. So I think you can see visually and from those numbers that the steep topography on our site is clearly atypical and not commonly found within the zoning district in general. Happy to answer any questions the board may have. Otherwise, I will hand it off to Chad Ingram, the project's geotechnical engineer.
Just for clarification, you're saying though that that the 5 parcels that are in orange have similar?
Yeah, it's a little hard to tell. There's actually 2 shades of orange, but the other 5 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 2 red and the 3 adjacent.
Okay.
Limited to just this section of Route 3A.
Okay. Yeah, we can proceed unless anybody has any questions on this.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chad Ingram. First time meeting you. Good evening tonight. You are in receipt of my February 20th report. I'm a geotechnical engineer in a 20-person firm that specializes in soils, geotechnical, structural, and drainage relating to construction from Florida to Massachusetts. To keep, in the interest of time, I will keep this brief, and ultimately, any questions you have, feel free to interrupt me, or we can certainly speak afterwards. Essentially, we were retained to go up to this site to perform the geotechnical investigation. We're normally on a site 1, maybe 2 times. In this particular case, we're on the site 3 times for over 5 days, given the fact that the soils were very unique on site. As professionals, we rely heavily on NRCS mapping. That is the platform that we professionals use. And about 95% of the time, we find these sites to be fairly consistent and generally consistent with what is mapped. This site would be an exception to that. We are anticipating going through the district. If you want to slide down, Dan, we were anticipating finding loamy soils, and see if you can keep going down for me. And very granular soils. And another sheet down, as we go down, you'll see that 2 site soils here, loamy soils, well drained, good infiltration, moderate concerns of erosion. And in the front of the site, actually, excellent soils for construction, for septic, for stormwater. But again, this is not what we found on site. Next. Right here, you'll see the 2 site soils, and specifically they have ratings of A and B. So they should have high infiltration, should be easy for construction, low potential for erosion. What you really have on this site are Cs and Ds. And the reason those groups are like that is a couple reasons. Number one, we found a high percentage of silt and clay on this site, not anticipated, coupled with the fact that you had historic consolidation and disturbance from decades ago. And having the fill and the disturbance from decades ago have put a surcharge on this site that further reduced these soils from having the potential of infiltration and also having a high potential of runoff as well as erosion. Accordingly, that has forced us to provide a lot of mitigation techniques that would not be used on most sites. Can you slip down, Dan? One of the things about infiltration is the front of the site, we expected to find very well-drained soils that consist of sands, sandy gravel, sandy loams. You would be infiltrating at rates, not to get technical, of 5, 8, 10 inches an hour. And as Dan goes through the next two slides, you'll see that's 0, that's virtually 0, and that's 0. So 60% of the tests we took out there have a result of approximately 0. And what that means is, though you do have some sands present, they are not functioning as the soil mapping indicates them to be. So this is an anomaly. This isn't something we normally see. And again, it comes down to high consolidation and the lack of the soils that should be on the mapping. Couple photos I put in here. And this relates to something called sidewall seepage. Again, very uncommon. Seepage is something where we go out, we drill, we do test pits, we try to find groundwater, right? We want to find where the bottom is. And what we found was consistent with groundwater. We expected to find that. What's not consistent is finding sidewall seepage or water seeping through the sides of the soil walls, not just immediately above the groundwater, but 7, 8, 9 feet above. In fact, these two examples we show here, you can see that we're literally 8 to 9 feet above the groundwater table. Water is seeping through. And in this case, you've gone down, I think it's 12 feet, 144 inches, yet 5 feet down, you have water seeping through. And it just so happens to correspond to where the historic fill was placed. Consolidation has occurred. And what that means to all of us is, well, it now becomes very stringent to construct, and there's additional measures that have to be done in the form of under drains and similar infrastructure outside of standard construction to get that water away from buildings, to get that water away from your stormwater facilities, et cetera, get it on its way so the site can function as intended. Here's a construction cost that we came up with. I do a lot of construction in multiple states, and I had one of our subcontractors go through this. You can see here that we have, and I'll show you a couple brief pictures of it, under drains at the top, which some sites get them, right? You have water problems, so you want to divert the water away from buildings. In this case, it's a more extreme version of it. You have pad fingers, which what that is that's literally setting your building or any building on top of about a foot of stone with piping within it, because the under drains around the building alone are not enough to mitigate the fact that the high clay potential in here, which was not present on the NRCS mapping, you're going to have water wicking up with the clay, getting the concrete slabs wet. You get moisture and humidity inside the building, which ultimately can lead to mold. So another belts and suspenders requirement to mitigate the water. Pad remediation, because of the boulders and the fill that we found historically, soft soils that are present due to all of this perched water on site from the consolidated soils. And then as you work your way down, we do have boulders. We put in a measure for crushing and possibly the potential for soil cement underneath the pad. And that's something I do. I mean, we specialize in soil cement. We're probably one of the only firms on the East Coast that do it, but it still means we only do it on 1 out of 50 sites. To do all of this on one site, something I haven't done in 31 years of doing this. And then you get into the fact that because of the slopes and the soils are so erodible, we don't just simply recommend straw matting. We recommend very intense matting that's labor intensive to install. If you want to go down one I can start to show you just a few of these before I finish and answer questions. This is something we worked with Dan's team over the past year on. You see something I refer to as like building U drain. So it's a building under drain. And so these are going all the way around the building. It's a deep trench filled with stone, not just something wrapped in fabric that we typically put in that's code required. This is something that has to go down deep because of all the perched water coming out of the soil due to the fact that the soil isn't acting as it should and it's consolidated from historic disturbance. Beneath the building, right below it, you have a basin, and right above that, you have something called a BMP U drain. I've probably done this 5 times in 30 years where there's so much perched water to ensure that the basin can function, mitigate and attenuate the stormwater that it's used to and designed to do. We can't have it overloaded or over hydraulically loaded with perched water or subsurface water. That water has to be intercepted as well. So in this drawing, you literally have a complete building under drain as well as a basin under drain or a BMP under drain, so the basin can function in the only area that we even found sand on site. You want to get down one more, Dan? Here's a building pad under drain. We called them fingers in the example for the cost estimate we put together. This is approximately 1 foot of stone with perforated pipe traversing in about 40-foot centers, 30-foot centers. Again, to make sure that that water, through what we call capillary action, isn't wicked up with the clay, having the slab get wet and causing moisture, high humidity, and potential mold within the building. Slope stabilization. Because the soils are so consolidated, so stiff, so dense, so heavy with the silt and the clay content, and coupled with the perched water, which is very unusual, this isn't standard straw matting. The matting that I drew this up many months ago and gave it to Dan, this is very expensive synthetic matting that has to be put in by specialty contractors to ensure that during construction, and it would have to be staged in different areas in the sequence, as this is installed, then additional grading can take place and phased. Because if not, on a normal site, you would simply seed it, put some matting down, and you're done. And in this case, it has to be done in certain phases to ensure that you don't have the erosion runoff with the sediment and obviously causing a violation. I know it's a lot of material. I'll try not to keep it too technical, but I'm more than willing to answer any specific questions any of you may have.
Chad, this is Adam Brodsky. Can you just review the total premium and costs associated with all of these additional measures, please?
Sure. Dan, if you want to go up a couple slides, I think I'm about $874,000. And that's for this site. It's somewhere around $200 to $250 a square foot, Adam. If you were to put in a smaller building, you would probably need slightly less. The problem is, as the building gets smaller, the square footage price for all of these additional mitigation measures would increase. So you could be looking at $300 to $400 a square foot. I'm not going to speak to the economics or viability of it. That's not my skill set. But the bottom line is, no matter what structures put in here, these measures have to take place for this site to be a reality.
And Chad, these are costs over and above the typical site and construction costs that you would find for a site like this?
Correct. And as I stated earlier, we run into a lot of jobs. We get hired to do problematic jobs along the East Coast. And hey, we've done 1, 2, sometimes maybe 3 portions of this. I haven't come across a site that we would have to do this many mitigation measures above and beyond your typical site work construction costs.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Watkins, for interrupting.
No problem. I guess any board members at this point have questions for Chad? Now, Chad, of those test pits, obviously you mentioned sand, silt, clay, perched water. Some of the former fill, by former fill and historic disturbance, is that material that you're picking up from the previous like structure that was there? Is that?
It's more than that, because you still have a virgin layer, the existing grade, and the amount of fill that was placed on top of it, I'm not sure where it came from. Some certainly can be the building debris. It could have been crushed. There's brick, there's cinders, there's some cinder block, but there's multiple feet of fill in areas of the site within the proposed building pad that I don't believe they were from the site. They were probably an adjoining site, which was very common decades ago. And that soil is usable to an extent, but one of the problems is once you place that on a site, and let's face it, there were machines that were pushing that material around, they've further consolidated the existing soils underneath of it to restrict their reuse as structural fill, if that makes sense to you.
Okay. And maybe just a quick, simple explanation of like perched water.
Sure. So perch water happens when you go out and if you dig a hole, test pits as we call them, we're digging down, we're going to try to find refusal, whether that's bedrock, competent soil, or groundwater. We try to document that on the site. During the excavation, you may have water, seepage, or perched water that flows through the sidewalls. That does occur on some sites if you have a clay layer, you have a little bit of a rock layer, or a fill layer. On this particular site, 8 of the 9 test pits we did, and as you can see, we went very deep on those. They were coming through from 28 inches down. A lot of them were at the fill layer or right below the fill layer, but to have the seepage come through the walls, that presents a major problem. Because of the topography out there, if the site was perfectly flat, water would eventually get through. It may take a very long time, a week versus 1 day to get through, but it would get through. Because of the topography and how consolidated and densified the existing soils are, as soon as that water goes through a few feet, it now starts to bleed through. Well, you can't construct a site as you would in a typical construction without mitigating that water and bypassing that water away.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
If nobody has any other questions for Chad, we can proceed to the next portion.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Greg Morse?
Great, thank you. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. I've been working in Cohasset over the past 20 years on similar site development projects. I'm a licensed engineer with the state. I'm also a licensed soil evaluator with the Department of Environmental Protection. I started work on this site back in 2020. My firm conducted soil testing at the site, and I just wanted to concur with everything that I've heard so far today, which is that this is a unique site. The soil testing we did, where we were able to get percolation tests passing for a septic system, was extremely deep. The perk tests were down 18 feet and 16 feet below the ground surface. It was not up closer as you would encounter on other sites. I've worked on several other sites within the 3A commercial district. The figure that Dan Ketchus had put up earlier showed the location of the district in Cohasset, which essentially is broken up into 2 parts. There's what I would refer to as the southern portion of the district down near the Scituate town line. Down there, I've worked at the O'Donohue Insurance Company, the Mulaney's and Theodora's property, the Amalang Tradesman Building, and the Village Greenery. I didn't have these soil conditions, nor did I have the topographical constraints at any of those locations in the district. The district is relatively flat, and the soils are generally suitable for septic systems and generally suitable much closer to the ground surface. At the northern end of the 3A commercial district, which is the portion that we're in with this project, I've worked across the street at the Dunkin' Donuts property, the Stop and Shop property, the Feng Shui restaurant, as well as the Scituate Hill property, which is under construction currently. And I would reiterate the same thing. The topography at the northern end of Cohasset within the 3A district on the east side of 3A is generally flat. You're not faced with the topographical constraints that you are with on the west side of 3A. This site is one of the steepest sites. From the front to the back, there's almost 40 feet in grade change from 3A to the back property line. And so how this correlates to use within the zoning bylaw, and with respect to your variance, looking at the uses, this site would be perfect for a low intensity use. For example, a self-storage facility. Looking at some of the other uses allowed in the district, they would typically require larger septic systems. They would require large, flatter areas to construct parking lots or to have outdoor storage of a tradesman or a boatyard. That's just not feasible on a site that has 40 feet of grade change in the soil conditions it does. So the intensity of use is something that would be looked at on a site like this. Something low intensity like the proposal, I think, would be a good fit based on
I think-
Mr. Watkins,
We lose
you've lost-
audio?
I was making sure that wasn't on my end. I think we might have,
So,
he might have froze, so maybe we can come back to him, Adam, if.
thank you. It's actually a perfect segue into Luke Mitchell's presentation, and thank you, Greg Morse.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. For the record, my name is Luke Mitchell. I work for VHB. I lead the land planning team in Massachusetts for VHB. Among other things, we take on a lot of projects that involve gauging the feasibility of development projects on sites all over the Commonwealth. Often it includes coming up with concepts, pulling together financial pro formas, and basically gauging the project costs versus the anticipated net operating income. We've done this for a lot of private owners. We've done it for a lot of municipalities. We also have some on-call contracts. We do this regularly for mass development, mass housing, and mass housing partnership. So we do quite a bit of work quite like this. Of course, I'm here in support of the use variance application for 149 King Street. And what I can speak to is general market conditions and the feasibility of this proposal. I'd point out, I know that it's been pointed out before, but I would point it out again because it would be part of what we typically look at. The fact that this site has been unused for a quarter century is very much an indicator of the fact that most uses that are permitted are likely infeasible. Sometimes there might be other reasons that it hasn't been developed, but in this case, considering the fact that a lot of the parcels nearby have been developed, are in use, it's an important point. So I won't go through all the different cost premiums because we've heard that from Chad and from Greg, but I agree with those assessments that this site is challenging and it presents those cost premiums. And those cost premiums translate to a gating factor, as Greg was alluding to. In order to overcome these sunk costs, this investment that you got to do up front, you're going to have to find a low intensive use of the property. Really challenging site. And we looked at a few different land uses at a high level. So one of them is, of course, residential. Residential is a great example of an intensive use for some of the reasons that Greg mentioned. You need a lot of parking for residential uses. You need to make a lot more of the site flat. You need to do landscaping and placemaking and make it a nice place to be. So that all takes a lot of work. In addition to the septic treatment that you need to build for that sort of use is much more intensive. These are all project costs that would need to be layered on top of those initial site work costs. That, guys, give me a minute, okay, please. Sorry. Yeah, and because, and for some of the reasons that have been mentioned previously, because of the unique site conditions, you really couldn't fit too many units of housing out here anyways, maybe a couple, maybe a few, but certainly not enough to give you the economy of scale that you would need in your financial pro forma to overcome those initial costs from our assessment. So we also thought about office. Office, frankly, has the same sort of intensive characteristics of housing. And it's intensive in that you need more parking, you need more space set aside for the treatment of septic, and you need landscaping and all of that, and you need more of the site to be flattened out and accessible. So similar thing there. Plus, we also looked at the real estate market for office in Cohasset. You guys might know something that I don't, but all I have is CoStar, which is the industry standard for real estate development data. Looking at CoStar, there's no evidence of any significant office development taking place in the last decade in Cohasset, nor is there any office developments planned in the pipeline, which speaks to a tepid demand for office space. So that on, setting aside even the cost premiums on the demand side, there's limitations. So industrial, same as above, no significant development having taken place or planned to be taking place. So we looked at retail. That's a bit different, although retail does have all of those intensive site uses that I think you understand and you get the point. But in terms of the market for retail, there has been development in the past 10 years. But what we also saw is that there's this pretty significant vacancy rate for retail in Cohasset of about 8%, which is higher than you'd want it to be. That translates to about 41,000 square feet of vacant space. So when you have, which of course is endemic to retail, you see a lot of that taking place across the state. More people are shopping online and things like that. We don't need to go into all that, but the fact is there's a lot of vacancy already. So the idea of building new retail on top of all the huge cost premiums is infeasible from our assessment. So getting to the proposed use, which is self-storage, it's compared to all these other uses, it's quite unique in how non-intensive it is, and which obviously sets up distinct advantages for being a feasible project. First, there's very little parking that's required. People are only there so often, so you don't need as much parking as you would for those other uses. In addition to that, septic is extremely limited in what you would need for any septic treatment, which is great because that takes up a lot of your space. It eats into your developable space. Also, much less traffic is generated, which translates into maintenance and operation costs. So because of these factors, with something like self-storage, you're able to avoid. I should also mention the architecture of self-storage means that you don't need to build all the fixtures, furnishes, and lots of the things that go into a residence, a store, or an office space. You have a lot of costs inside the shell of the building. Self-storage, you don't necessarily have most of those costs. So that's how you're able to make a financial pro forma that pencils out, that's feasible, that you can actually build. So yeah, I guess in conclusion, I can hand it back to Adam and Jesse, but proposed project, it requires minimal infrastructure. It generates very low traffic, and it has almost no environmental impact. At the same time, it elevates the tax base, which I think is consistent with the goal of any commercial district. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thanks, Luke. Anyone have any questions for Luke? Okay, Adam or Jesse, I'll hand it back to you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins. Jesse?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Jesse Morgan, Senior Vice President, Premier Storage Investors, 530 Oak Court Drive, Memphis, Tennessee. Obviously we've given a lot of information. Certainly there's a lot that we can continue to expand upon, but just wanted to close by once again thanking the board for their time and their consideration. This has obviously been a long process and a detailed process, but we appreciate the comments and questions we received, because I believe what we've uncovered through our own analysis, which a lot of what we knew on the front end as we began this project, which is how challenged this site is. But as we continue to delve deeper into the challenges that are presented here by the site conditions, but also by the market conditions that uniquely make this site a well suit for self-storage, whereby many of these other uses, as we continue to look into them, don't appear to be viable, especially given the market as a whole, as Luke has touched on. But we can certainly expand on any of these points. We want to be cognizant of your time, but we can expand on anything in this submission or answer anything more you'd like to ask. And with that, certainly would close and welcome any questions you all may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, you mentioned we have a lot of information in front of us. Obviously, as a board, we have the 3 key criteria to look at. So I'll open it up first to board members. Are there any outstanding questions or clarifications that you have at this point? Okay. Hearing nothing, we can open it up to the public. Is there any member of the public that has any questions, comments in regards to this application? If you could raise your hand, or I think I saw one thing pop up in the chat, Julie, if you want to facilitate.
Yes, Lance Dial is going to be promoted to panelist, and then also Paul Davis.
Great. And as you get promoted, if you could just give us your name and address for the record, and then unmute and you can make your comment.
Great. Should I go, Mr. Chairman?
Yep, you can go ahead, Lance.
Great. My name is Lance Dial at 21 Rocky Lane in Cohasset. I am the vice chair of the Cohasset School Committee. I'm here in my capacity as a citizen of the town, not as representing the committee, but I am a member of that committee. And the reason that brings me here to learn a lot about soil and topography and all sorts of really fascinating stuff that doesn't come up enough at our school committee meetings is, as anyone who's come to our school committee meetings over the past few months would have noticed, our schools are in a little bit of a budget situation. And we're looking for all sorts of ways to balance out a dismal fiscal situation. And so with that in mind, I've been looking around for different ways to try and mitigate the impact of our budget situation, both as the schools and as a town, and what we can do to help our schools prosper and continue where they are with minimal cuts. And this is the sort of project that I would support as a town member living across the street from the proposed location, and also as a member of our school board, because it helps raise tax revenue, and tax revenue can feed right into our schools and be able to potentially save jobs of teachers and educators. And so I have no expertise on the various criteria you have to assess, and I understand there's laws and rulings on that. But to the extent one of your considerations relates to the benefits to the town or the potential harm of denying a variance, those considerations would, in my opinion, certainly considering the perspective of the schools as a net beneficiary of this additional tax revenue, would be we'd very much appreciate it. So I'll close there, and thank you all for your service as a fellow board volunteer. I understand exactly what you have to do all your time, and I very much appreciate all you do for our town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your comment. Next up is Paul Davis. If you could do the same and just unmute yourself and identify your name and address for the record. Paul, if you can hear me, it looks like you're still muted.
Fine. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry, I only have one hand. I'm in a sling on the other arm. So Paul Davis, 38 Rocky Lane. I wanted to speak in favor of this proposal. As a resident, the town, I know one of the former members was talking about what what he's found for vacancies, but just being around, there's a lot of vacant retail already. There's a lot of vacant office. There's vacant medical space. I've watched this particular site, for 32 years since I moved to town. For a while it was a, mechanic shop with lots of junk cars spread about. It was a contractor's yard for a while with box trailers and equipment outside. This is a prime, obviously, location right on 3A. So if somebody could have found a way to develop it, I think they would have, going to the difficulty of this site. And I think overall the costs of developing on that site for what you're going to get when you're done. I also want to point out earlier when they were going through the maps, those red properties are Situate Hill, which I purchased 2 years ago, which were also negatively affected by this zoning change. And I just want to speak to how that all went down quickly. That I live in town and I was aware. I read the warrant. I knew what they were proposing to consolidate, but everything they talked about was simplicity and consolidation. They weren't changing any boundaries, and nowhere did anyone ever say that they were reverting back to the strictest of districts and eliminating many, good uses and good projects. I know the attorney Adam Brodsky said earlier that what Tom Callahan said at town meeting, and again, it yielded one storage facility that has already been built and a new one that just got permitted a week ago. When town meeting made their vote, they thought they were getting another self-storage facility. So you're not going against the will of town meeting. And to what the engineers were saying further down, the Situate Hill property would not have been able to be developed. We have off-site septic and infrastructure that was predated a lot of the regulations. So again, we bought the property 2 years ago and started what we're doing, with buildings. And there's already one lot that we had a plan for that we can't do because of this zoning change, which I have time to pivot and figure out something else. But this developer doesn't have that opportunity. The rug kind of got pulled out from underneath them. And I just want to share one stat that I looked up earlier. So this property is valued at or assessed, in generating taxes on $1.1 million. The self-storage facility, the existing one down the road, is $11 million. So the tax revenue, if this project is allowed, is a 10 times, which is obviously significant. Back to what Lance was just saying. I know it's not the role of the ZBA to correct the problems created by other boards, but I'd like to think that all the boards try to work cohesively and work together and do what's best for the town. So with that being said, I urge the board to be fair and please vote yes for this variance.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the comments. Julie or anybody else in the queue?
Not seeing any hands raised. Actually, yes. Lily and Joe, promoting them to panelist.
Okay, we see Lily and Joe. If you could unmute yourself and identify your name and address for the record. It looks like you are unmuted. Lily and Joe, if you're able to hear me, we can't hear you currently.
Or feel free to put your question or comment in the chat and I can read it aloud.
Okay, yeah, we might have to rely on that. Lily and Joe, if you can hear us, if you could maybe put your comment or question in the chat. Seem to have an audio issue. Any other people in the queue? I don't think so.
Not seeing any additional hands.
Okay. I guess I'll ask the board members one more time. And does anybody have any additional questions for the applicant? Okay. Just for both the applicants, obviously Adam knows our process, but the applicants' knowledge as well as the public's. If we do get a motion to close the hearing tonight, then this board would deliberate on this hearing at the end of our meeting tonight. So we would take each of the remaining hearings first and then deliberate on this. So do we have a motion to close this hearing?
Mr. Watkins, this is Adam Brodsky, excuse me, and Chair McMorris. As you know, PSI has this property under agreement. We don't own the property, and we don't want to do anything that would disadvantage the landowner. And so if it's appropriate to get a sense of the board, we'd ask that you do so, because we can't be in a position to risk a zoning freeze, which would preclude the landowner from coming forward and seeking zoning relief for 2 years. So I wanted to see if the board may give us a sense of what they're thinking about this project before it entertains any motions, please.
Yeah, I mean, David, I don't know what your take is. Obviously, we haven't deliberated as a board. I guess one of the pieces that I wrestled with a little bit was the topography piece. I think we got some additional data tonight on that, but you know, I don't know how in the weeds I shouldn't get. I don't. David, do you have any take on what we want to do? Do we want to kind of give feedback on each topic, or?
I don't know. I mean, this has been a long hearing with an awful lot of information and some very unique circumstances. I'm reluctant to do a sense of the board because we don't generally do that. I understand, Adam, why you're asking, but I'm not sure it's appropriate to do that. I know, Woody, what's your thinking on that?
I'm very uneasy about giving a sense of the board before we deliberate, given that we're going to be deliberating tonight. That's my assessment as we sit here. So it's a matter of maybe an hour or an hour and a half waiting, but you'll certainly, Attorney Brodsky, I think, get a sense of the board. But I really think we ought to, begin deliberating before we give you a sense.
Adam, are you thinking that if the board was not in favor of this, that you would withdraw the application?
That would certainly be a consideration, or at least request a continuation.
Well, the problem is before we deliberate, we have to close the hearing. Once we close the hearing, can't really file a
Well,
motion.
David, could we let's just make the assumption, for the sake of argument only, that the board were to not approve this. It always could be done without prejudice, or deny without prejudice, and allow an applicant or presumably the landowner, to come back to us.
Chair McMorris, would the board entertain, if you move to close the hearing and the deliberations are not favorable, would the board entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing and then allow us to either withdraw or to continue? I believe the board does have that ability to reopen the public hearing.
Yeah,
And I appreciate Mr. Chittick's suggestion. I can't answer tonight the question of whether that would avoid the zoning freeze in a variance matter.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I
I'm,
don't think-
personally, I'm not expert enough to opine.
Um,
And I should say, I have seen other boards deliberate and close the public hearing at the end. By closing the public hearing means that there will be no additional information. Again, it's unorthodox, but some boards will do that. So I'm offering any number of procedural ways of trying to address this issue.
I would think that the safest procedural way to do this, Matt, tell me what you think, but it seems to me to not close the hearing. But are we allowed to deliberate an open hearing? I don't know. It seems the easiest way would be to
I mean, I
talk
would
about
think
it.
maybe we would be, right, in order to kind of come up with the details of a written decision, but
I do know that the Cohasset Conservation Commission will typically deliberate and then at the end, close the public hearing and vote to issue orders. I believe that's how
Really?
it's done,
Okay.
but
I mean, it would seem to me that.
Mr. Morse may recall better than me.
Greg, you're on mute.
Situate zoning board would deliberate and close the public hearing after deliberations.
Really? Okay. I mean, as long as we can, it would seem to me that would be the cleanest way to do it. I think entertaining a motion after the hearing is closed is a problem. But it's up to you, Matt, how you want to conduct it.
would we not, would we continue it currently and then deliberate and then opt to close? Like in order to go to the next hearing, we would have to make a motion to continue this, and then if we have an item for deliberations, if we had a deliberation, then we would entertain a motion after the deliberation.
Yes, we've never done it, but I mean, that doesn't mean we shouldn't. I just haven't run into this.
Mr. Watkins, Chair McMorris, I know you've got a full agenda tonight. Was the intention to deliberate on this matter this evening? Simply because, I mean, we have the full team here, but
I mean, when we deliberate, you can't take any more input anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think we have all the information we need and that we're gonna get. And I certainly don't want to delay your people any longer, so.
We're a patient group, sir. And we're certainly available for more information. You know, we were cognizant of your busy hearing tonight and we made our presentation. That was the efficient version. So we're certainly available for the information and we're willing to wait around. It's been a long process, but you know, as we mentioned, we believe in this case and we believe it's the right fit for the town. So we're happy to wait around and work with y'all.
Yeah, so it sounds like regardless would end up with currently a motion to continue, and then
continue until later tonight. you
In the
mean.
deliberation portion, we could. I guess we have some flexibility whether that continuance,
Yeah,
but I don't see much advantage in kicking the deliberation portion to a different meeting, right? So
I don't
probably
either.
make a motion to, if we could, if somebody would make a motion to continue the hearing, and then when we get to the deliberation portions, we'll bring it up for deliberation.
Yeah, I'd second that. Or,
Seems
is
to
there
me
a motion to
reasonable.
continue?
What's that?
Is there a motion yet, or do you need one?
We need one.
Okay, I'd move that we continue this hearing till later this evening, and that we deliberate during the continued and still open hearing.
I'd second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. We'll take this vote in order as suggested earlier. All in favor, David McMorris,
Aye.
Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Matt Watkins, aye. Woody Chidick,
Aye.
Michael Dickey,
Aye.
Lee Darst.
Aye.
Okay, so the motions is to continue this hearing to our deliberations later tonight. So thanks again to the team for all your information, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. See you
Um,
shortly.
Chair Watkins, before we move on to the next project review, I just have two comments in the Q&A section. I can read them aloud. Andrew Gallagher is in favor of the project and agrees with Paul and Lance. And Lily and Joe, we are in favor of a low impact business on 3A, especially one that would add convenience to the rental apartments on the hill. It just seems to make sense.
Okay. Thank you, both of you, for your comments. Just shuffling some paper here. So our next hearing is a special permit for 33 Forest Notch. This is a new hearing. The application is for a special permit to expand the single-family dwelling. If we could bring forward the representatives or applicants for 33 Forest Notch.
Yes, Jennifer Bernsteel is going to be the representative.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, how are
If you
you?
could, good, thanks. If you could just identify yourself and your affiliation for the record.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Bernsteel. I am working on the architectural plans for Laura and Jesse Sierras. They on 33 Forest Notch, and I'm presenting tonight for a special permit to add a second floor over an existing garage and a raised small deck off the back of the primary bedroom suite.
Okay, thank you. And do you need anyone else promoted, or you're good?
If Laura and Jesse are here, they can be promoted if they want to. They may want to comment, or they may just want to be present. And they can, if they are here, they can always remain silent if they don't want to comment.
Okay. Looks like Julie has promoted them. Yeah, do you have, did you want to share screen or?
Yes, I can either share my, I'll share my presentation materials and then I can show you.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Okay. So I'm gonna share, I'll actually share the site plan first. Right now, we are looking to add a, can you see this okay?
Yes,
We are looking to add a second floor on an already existing garage footprint. The corner of the footprint currently sits within the setback. This lot, though, is a corner lot, so it has kind of a, and not quite, typical layout as far as the lot setbacks are concerned. So I spoke with the engineer who thought we might qualify for a special permit based on the current footprint of the house. This is currently within the setback. The new deck would be partially within the setback and partially not, but it's we're planning on keeping this exactly as it is and just adding a second floor on top of it. And I will share the actual plans and elevations so that you can see them also. So this is the existing garage. We're showing the garage. It may or may not be that we can keep the existing foundation, but we're keeping the existing footprint. It all depends on how far down the foundation goes. But right now we're maintaining the exact footprint of the garage. And this is the primary bedroom suite that we're adding on top. And this is the change in elevation. And we're trying to keep the roof lines low so that the height of the garage doesn't exceed the height of the existing house. And the deck is just a raised deck on posts outside of that footprint. So very simple and not very big. The balcony, it's 10 feet by 6 feet. So it's just enough to put a couple of chairs out there and sit and look at the backyard. And this is the way it looks from the back elevation and the way it looks from the left side elevation, where you can see more visibly where this is the corner that is in consideration.
What's the height of the current garage?
The height of the current garage is 17 foot 8.5.
Yeah, that's good.
And I can share my AutoCAD screen too if you want a picture of the existing.
No, it's just, it's currently non-conforming, which is good. So you're not creating a new non-conformity.
okay. Anything else you wanted to review with us, Jennifer, or I could open it up?
No, I think you can open it up. I think it's pretty straightforward what we're looking to do. And we're trying not to rock the boat, just get them a little extra space.
Can you show that first diagram you had up with the
The
shaded-
site plan.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I can zoom in if it makes it easier too.
and the new deck you say is off the second floor, right?
Yes.
All right, I'll open up to the board for questions.
Well, why don't you address the key, this is Woody Chidick, address the key issue in the relief you're seeking, which is that is it or is it not going to be significantly more detrimental to the neighborhood? I think we understand what you're doing and
Yes, and we don't believe that it'll be significantly more detrimental to the neighborhood because it's not visible for the neighbors. So it's not going to impact the it won't impact the part that's visible, won't be impacting any of the other neighbors as far as the appearance. And we believe that the appearance of the new addition that is conforming won't will add to the look of the house versus being detrimental as far as its appearance. And the nonconformity won't add to it won't be visible from the street. So I don't believe that it'll add to the impact.
And have you heard from the neighbors, particularly the Froyos, who will be looking at?
I have not.
Ross?
I don't know if Jesse has heard from anybody.
We have not, but we can reach out.
It's always certainly a courtesy. I mean,
Yeah.
I am the owner of the Magnolia Family Living Trust, which is the butter. So I just wanted to get that on the record. I'm the closest abutter. Because I am the abutter, I cannot make any comments or participate in any voting for this special permit.
Okay, thank you, Lee.
Charles Higginson, I'd like to note that none of the neighbors are shown on this site plan. I believe we've asked everybody to do that.
correct.
Although I think this is this a Zoom? I wanted to say on the initial, I think this might be a zoomed in, or yeah, you do
Yes,
have,
that was a zoomed in. So it does have the neighbors shown on there. I was just zooming in so you could see it better.
it looks like.
My house is
looks to me
shown
like a
on there.
big- it
I just
looks-
have a big yard in the front.
Yeah, it looks like it's an old site plan, from 2016 on the one that I have in my packet. But it does look like the abutting structures are on there.
Other than the Froyos, whom I do not know, but they're the ones that are going to see this. The other people are kind of unlikely to see much, given the vegetation and things, having looked at it. It may not be a problem, certainly. I'm not suggesting it is, but it's just,
If I could make
sure.
just a comment that
Who knows the site?
the line, yes, I do know the site. The line between the Froyos and this site, it's wooded. It's a wooded strip that fills out completely in the summer, so you can't see anything. And in the winter, it still stays pretty foliated.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty much brush throughout the winter. And then in the summer, the trees fell in. You really can't see any of the neighboring houses in the back area like there.
I actually have, I don't know, I was just gonna look and see. I have some pictures of the existing site. I don't know if that would be helpful.
Well, most of us, most of our board goes out to the properties prior to, so I think we're fairly familiar with.
Okay.
If you have it handy, you could put it up in case somebody hasn't seen it, but.
This is a picture looking in that direction, so you can see the foliage from here. How wooded the site is behind the house. That's another view. and then looking in this direction.
Well, the only reason I brought it up was that as a matter of courtesy for the neighbors, so not that I suspect that they'll object. I have no idea, but I mean, I didn't see anything that seemed egregious.
No, we agree, and that would be our intention prior to making any moves in terms of construction there.
Well, something for us to consider prior to, but be that as it may, I mean, I think.
We've also tried to remain sympathetic to the architecture of the house so that, and keep the roof lines low so that we weren't doing something that would, that in design would be more impactful as far as how it would be something massive that they would be looking at from the direction of any house. So we tried to keep the proportions very similar to the proportions of the house as it is now and be sympathetic with the roof lines so that we were thoughtful to the rest of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, if you were moving, in my estimation at least, if you were moving the footprint toward the lot lines, that would be a problem. But you aren't.
And I could just check in, is this on sewer or septic?
It's on sewer.
If you with the additional room. Any other board members have questions?
I'm good, Matt. I think it's relatively straightforward.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Same here, I'm good.
All right, if any member of the public has any comments or questions, if you could either raise your hand or put your comment into the chat and we can promote you if needed. Not seeing any.
Not
Public.
seeing any.
Okay. Well, thanks to the applicant for the information, and do we have a motion to continue this hearing?
I'll move that we continue this to our April hearing.
Well, do we have a second?
Woody Chitik, aye.
Moved and seconded, yep. So we'll say David McMorris,
Aye.
Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Matt Watkins, aye, Michael Dickey,
Aye.
Woody Chitik,
Aye.
Lee Darst.
Abstain.
And Matt, I think it'd be worthwhile explaining, if the applicant doesn't already understand, that the continuation until April is for purposes of rendering a decision. Not for, you know, I mean, if there's more information we need, fine, but
Yep.
this is so straightforward, it's just a question of.
No, we appreciate the time and the explanation there.
Yeah, so at our next hearing in April, we would typically have a drafted decision for the board to deliberate on. And by the sounds of it, we don't have any additional requests or information that we have for you at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Bear with me 1 minute. Got lots of paperwork here tonight.
You're the doc guy, aren't you?
I think I'm Doc Junior, you know? becoming Doc Senior here, but let me see here. Although I just shuffled my agenda. Then the next one though is 95 Atlantic, right, Julia? Is that,
No, it's 80 North Main.
or is it 80 North Main? It is the dock, yeah. Okay, so our next application is 80 North Main Street, a new application that filled out a simplified dock permit. And it looks like Carmen and team are here. If you could introduce yourself for the record and move forward, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Carmen Hudson from Campos Hudson Engineering. I'm joined tonight by the homeowner, Tom Hens, if he could possibly, oh, he is promoted.
Yes, I'm on.
Also, the general contractor for his home, Jack Lefebvre, and the person that will be doing the dock installation, Keith Waylo. I don't know if they are present. If they are, could you please promote them, Julia, if possible?
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
you said Keith and
Keith
who was
and
the first person?
is Jack Lefebvre.
Jacques.
Okay.
Jack, I'm never going to pronounce your name well. I'm so sorry. This is a dock application. The site is located at 80 North Main Street. It has been developed as a single-family residential property. The house is currently under construction. It is completely, the lot and the building are conforming to all of the zoning requirements. The dock that we're proposing is going to be in the rear, right here where you see it. The property on the left is 90 North Main Street. The property on the right is 72 North Main Street. This is a closer view of the dock. The pier will be 20 feet in length. It will have a 3-foot wide by 24-foot ramp with a 10 by 16 float. It is going over a very small portion of salt marsh. There will be a total of 6 piles supporting the 20-foot pier. Stairs will be on the landward side. And the float, which is the portion of the pier, of the dock that is closest to a property line, that's the side property line shared with 90 North Main Street, is 26 feet away. So it's greater than the 20 feet required by zoning. As you know, Section 9, and actually it's Section 9.4G5, has the requirement that the ground footprint of a dock cannot exceed 200 square feet. We only have 6 piles, a total of 6, not even 6 square feet in footprint. They cannot exceed 20 feet in height. The maximum height here is 12.2 feet. It has, we're proposing 3-foot railings. We also wrote in our application the reasons why the dock project can be approved. That's under Section 12. And that would be here 12.5A. And most of this, as you know, is for all special permits, so they really don't apply to dogs. So this regarding ingress and egress and traffic flow and, fire access is not applicable. Pollution to water facilities and drainage also is not applicable. Regarding noise, vibration, light, dust, smoke, heat, glare, or odor, this doesn't apply either, and we're not even proposing lights on the dock. Refuse collection is not applicable. And dimensions, design, and materials, that's for screening and buffers. Also, is not applicable to a dock. Regarding yards and other open space, as I mentioned, is greater than the minimum 20-foot setback to the side property boundary, and it doesn't contribute to lot coverage either, since it's pervious. Regarding economic impacts on the town and harmony and compatibility with other properties on the site, as you are as you're aware, there are many docks around Little Harbor. This right here is 80 North Main Street. This is 90 North Main Street, which has a dock. This is 72 North Main Street, which in this area, it didn't have a dock, but this dock has been installed a few years back. So it's 35 feet in length, 24-foot long gangway, and an 8 by 20-foot float. So this is very much in keeping with the neighborhood as well. And regarding any comments, we have received an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, and we're not aware of any comments from the Planning Board or the Board of Health. And at this time, I would be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Great, thank you, Carmen.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, you know, I wrote the decision on 72 North Main, the dock next door, and I did look that up earlier today, and it's very similar in proportionate size. And actually, even the float had got narrowed a little bit by the Conservation Commission, so it's the exact 10 by 16. And it seems to me like that dock is pretty appropriate for that area, and the dimensions that you mentioned with the square footage and height, setbacks, etc., seemed pretty standard to me. So I don't have any questions, but I just figured I'd mention that to the board too. I did look up that 72 North Main. It seemed to be very similar in size and scope to that. Any board members have questions?
Nope.
No, Matt, another one that looks relatively straightforward.
Okay. Any members of the public have questions, comments? If you could either raise your hand and we'll promote you, and or if you'd like to put a question or comment in the chat. All right. Not seeing anything, so it looks like it might be a quick hearing for you guys tonight. So we appreciate it. And,
very happy.
So we will just, if you were on before, you know, we'll end up making a motion to continue it, which means we'll have a draft decision at our April meeting that the board will review, deliberate on, and vote on. So that's our process.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may ask, do we need to be present at that hearing?
No, you don't have to be. I mean, I think the short answer is no, that you don't have to be, but we do, because it's a continued hearing, we do open the hearing at the beginning. So there could be, for example, you know, public comment or something that does come up.
Okay.
So, you know,
okay, I will plan to be there then.
Somebody, but not required. But
okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and have a wonderful short night. Hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make a motion to continue the hearing for 80 North Main Street.
Okay, yeah, I'll second it, but let me just Carmen, one point. Once we start deliberations, the hearing is closed anyway. You or your clients can't speak, so it's a judgment call on your part if you.
But I'm sorry.
That's what Matt was alluding to. I mean, you know, if there's new material, you probably should be here. If there's no new material, it's pretty unlikely any will be introduced.
Okay, so since there are no questions from the board or from any abutters, there will be no new material submitted by us?
Can't say, but if there is a blockout period, what is it, Julia, 1 week or 2 weeks of information?
It's generally a week and a day, so it's the Monday before.
We don't allow last minute submissions unless it's pretty significant, so.
Yeah, I think the only thing I was saying, Woody, is, you know, technically, because the hearing's continued,
Yeah,
we have to open it, which means somebody could have public comment. It's very unlikely.
Yeah.
What I would say is if you were on that portion and there's no public comment, you don't want to hang around for the rest of the meeting until we deliberate. It looks like it would be good. And I don't think, we don't have anyone tonight, but in other words, we're not making a motion tonight to close it because we need to get a draft decision for the next meeting. There's an outside chance that somebody could come with a comment, but that's
Okay.
I didn't mean to complicate things. Sorry if I do.
okay. So is moved and seconded. David McMorris.
Aye.
Charlie Higginson.
Aye.
Matt Watkins. Aye. Michael Dickey.
Aye.
Woody Chidick.
Aye.
Lee Darst.
Aye.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is a special permit for 90 Atlantic Avenue.
That's
Not-
95
not
Atlantic.
95 Atlantic Avenue, which is application for a special permit to expand the single-family dwelling.
This is Woody Chick. I'm recusing myself in this one.
Okay, thank you, Woody. And it looks like we've brought John Landry forward. And Yasmin, if you guys could introduce yourself for the record and your affiliation.
Sure. This is John Landy. Sorry, I'm not on video. I'm in a hotel room. We're a property owner with Yasmin Landy.
Hi, I'm Yasmin Landy. As John said, I'm his wife, and we recently purchased 95 Atlantic. I think we have a few people, I can't see if they've joined already, that are planning to do the presentation.
Okay, yep, I see two of them on now. So
Great, thank you.
John and Greg.
Thank you. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering, representing the Landys, the applicants and property owner on the property. Also with us is architect John Teriyaki. I'm going to do a share screen and put a copy of the site plan up. We're here seeking two special permits for the property at 95 Atlantic Ave, which is the Landys single-family home. Just bear with me while I get the plan up here. Can you see the plan?
Yes.
Yes, great, thank you. The two special permits we're seeking are in accordance with section 8.3 and 9.4 of the zoning bylaw for raising in elevation of the house and adding some additional porch and deck space to the house. The existing site itself, the home was built in 1930. It's located in the Residence C zoning district. It's a large lot. It's 65,577 square feet. Atlantic Ave is on the left-hand side of the screen over here. The lot lines extend down to Sandy Beach in the Atlantic Ocean at the top right corner of the page. The existing home is located right here. The lot in its entirety is within the FEMA floodplain. Closer to the ocean is a velocity zone. And at the back of the property over here where my cursor is, it transitions into an AE zone at elevation 11, which encompasses the entire front portion of the site where the home is. For reference, the existing ground contours around the home are at elevation 9. Elevation 9. And the existing home sits at elevation 11.5, so basically right at the 100-year floodplain. The lot itself is conforming with respect to zoning, but what's non-conforming with the house are the lot width The lot width is required to be 150 feet. And how it sits, it's 128.7 feet. And secondly, the side yard setbacks. On the left-hand side right here, the existing home is at 5.6 feet from the lot line, while 20 feet is the requirement. And on the right-hand side, the right corner of the house is at 19.6, where 20 feet is the requirement. The proposal here is really two parts. The first portion is to raise the elevation of the home. The home would be lifted up. New timber pilings, a total of 63 of them, would be placed underneath the home. The home would then be put back down on top of those piles at a higher elevation. We're proposing an elevation of 16.5. So it provides significant freeboard above the 100-year flood event. The pilings are designed in accordance with NFIP and FEMA requirements. In addition to that, we were reconstructing and altering a couple of porches and decks on the property. The front left corner here, we're adding a small portion to an existing porch that is here. And I'll go to the architecturals in a minute to further detail this, because this is a covered porch and it is within the side yard setback. On the front of the property, we're adding a porch with new steps on the front. We're adding a new deck on the side of the building with egress stairs down. And on the ocean side of the building, where there was an existing deck, we're slightly expanding that and providing new steps down as well on that deck.
And Greg, the 63 pilings, what was the height of the pilings?
So the top of the pilings will be at elevation 15 approximately. And then we have approximately 1.5 feet of beam and floor system to get to the first floor elevation of 16.5. Okay. Let me just get the architectural plans here. So on the architectural plans, what John detailed on the first floor plan here is that front porch that's at the front left corner of the building inside of the setback. We were adding a small amount of space to that, which is highlighted in red here. He's highlighted in green the area that's non-conforming with respect to the side yard setback on the left side. In red is the expansion. That expansion is approximately 14 square feet. It represents a 4% increase in that covered porch area. These are not enclosed porches. These just have roofs over them, but they are not enclosed porches. And building height, we have a diagram of building height. The building height here, even with the raised pilings, is compliant. It's a 35-foot maximum height in the zoning bylaw. We're coming in at 33 foot 4 inches for the max height, and that's from the average grade around the building to the top of the roof peak. So it is compliant height-wise. In the zoning bylaw, section 8.3, the board is authorized to issue special permits for structural changes, extensions, and alterations if it finds that the proposal is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure. Going back to our site plan, the proposal here, it's no closer to the property lines than the existing home sits. It's open decks and open porches. They're not new enclosed living spaces. The height is fully compliant. The foundation is fully compliant with FEMA, so it's in better compliance with FEMA standards. I would add that the Conservation Commission has already reviewed this project and issued an order of conditions. The board was sent a copy of that from Charlotte Pechtel, the conservation agent, during the comment period. I'm going to turn it over to you for questions or comments.
Okay. Board members, any Questions for Greg?
Or to me.
Again, I note that there are no neighboring buildings shown on the site plan as our instructions ask.
Yeah, I did notice that when that was brought up at just the previous hearing here, we could certainly add the abutting buildings. We're not working closer to them than the existing conditions existing at the site. I apologize, that's not on the plan.
But yeah, that is one of our requirements to have the budding structure. So if, if you could add that to the site plan and, just submit that prior to the next meeting, that would be helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just double checking. I was just looking at the reason I asked the question on the height was so the existing home is like what 28.3 you have. And, and the
Correct.
and
It's
the
going up
piles,
to-
the piles are 15 or 16.5 feet.
So that's an elevation.
Okay.
16.5 is the first floor elevation. Okay. The ground surface that we used for establishing the grade is at elevation 8.5 was the average grade around the building. So from elevation 8.5 to the first floor is 7.5 feet. It's not a 16.5 foot high piling. It's elevations with respect to that ground level. Okay, so it's the 7.5 foot high to the first floor.
Any other board questions?
Any feedback from abutters or neighbors?
We've actually talked to all of our neighbors, and I think we might be one of the last houses on Sandy Cove that have not been lifted. So Hollis Honeywell is the sister house to ours. They were built at the same time, and he completed his lift, I guess, last year. So he's been a fantastic resource actually to us, giving us a lot of recommendations and of who to talk to about the whole process. And I believe the neighbors to our other side have also gone through the process. I think John knows a little bit more about that, but the Havliceks have done the same. And there's a road between our property and then the Havliceks on that side that's non-conforming.
Thank you.
Of course.
Good. Lee, you have any questions? Are you good?
I don't. No, I don't. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Any members of the public have questions or comments? If you could either raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, not seeing anything there. Well, if you were here for our last few hearings, I'll repeat myself, but we typically would make a motion to continue the hearing. It doesn't sound like we have any requests for additional information from you at this time as an applicant. So we would expect to have a draft decision for the board to deliberate on during our April hearing.
Great.
So I will make a motion that we continue the hearing for 95 Atlantic Avenue.
Second.
Moved and seconded, David McMorris,
Hi.
Charlie Higginson. You're muted, Charlie. Come back to Charlie. Matt Watkins, aye. Lee Darst,
Aye.
Michael Dickey,
Aye.
and Woody's sustained from this one. So yeah, we'll continue this until April, and thanks for the presentation and information. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank
So-
you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, our next hearing is a dimensional variance for 350 Forest Avenue. Looks like we have some folks in attendance for that. If you could just identify yourself and your affiliation for the record, and you can move forward.
Good evening to the board. Michael Going, owner of 350 Forest Avenue, together with my wife.
Joanna Going. Thank you.
And my name is Jessica Williams. I'm the architect for the Goings, and I'm here to present to you our request for a variance. One thing I'll mention is that we are a pre-existing non-conforming lot, and we are asking for a variance to build an accessory structure. We can conform to all but the front setback, and so we're asking for a variance on the front setback. I do believe it's a variance, not a special permit that we are requesting, but I would take your advice from the board. And I can share my screen and give you a little walk around here. Are you able to see my screen? I have a Google Maps.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to orient you all where we are. This little dot here is showing 350 Forest Ave. This is the main house. This house had been a carriage house for the structure that's forward here. And obviously the Atlantic Ocean here, Forest Ave and Jerusalem going by there. If I do a little bit of a close-up, what you can see is behind the house on the south side, and north is at the top of the page here. This is an existing easement that is used as a driveway for several houses in this area. Interestingly, because of the orientation of this existing house, the Goings have an easement over the driveway for the house to the north, and they are able to access their house through that driveway, and then there's parking here. What we'd like to do is build a garage in this location and have the Goings actually use the egress that's over their property anyway. In turn, we're going to take down this shed and access a garage here and give up the access to the driveway here. So this would go back to being yard. One of the interesting things about the property is that while it is 350 Forest, the current door is actually on the north side. There is no door on Forest Ave. Actually, there is now. It's a construction door. We are currently under construction with a renovation to the house. To give you a little bit more understanding of the space, this is the house, as you can see, that's under construction. The area that we're talking about is down here, and you can see that the building to the north has a low garage. We're talking about behind this dumpster is the site that we're talking about here. Again, just to give you, that's my truck there, just to give you an idea of the scale. And you can see that there's another garage in the background, and then there's some other houses in the background. There's also a lot of natural growth and some trees. During the summertime, you really can't see the other structures. This time of year, you can actually see there's quite a lot of growth, but you really can't see a lot of the other structures there either. The area in the back this is a view looking from the easement towards their existing shed, which will come out, which would be the view looking down towards their garage. When it's constructed, this is another view from the same point. I'm just looking at the house just to orient you. And this is a view looking back to where the neighbors would be using their easement to get to the background. There's the shed there, and the driveway would go right through that part where you can see it's sort of a light area. This is just an image of what the garage will look like. And from that easement, this is the easement. There's actually a couple of trees, and we would actually go through between the trees to get down to where the garage is. The garage design is intended to look very much like the house. This is the design of the garage. We meet all of the requirements. I'll just go to the site plan here. For an accessory structure in your zoning bylaw, under your dimensional regulations, there is a note for 7 and 8, which allows that for an accessory structure that's under 15 feet, you can be within 6 feet of your side setback in 2 directions. However, this is our front setback. This is Forest Ave here. And while we are well beyond 100 feet from the easement to what we consider the front of the garage, the house is oriented, is basically Forest Ave is the address. So this is considered our front, the front. So our setback at only 60 feet, we can't meet it to 100 feet because we only have 115 feet of lot to work with. So that's where we are asking for the variance. And go back to the garage drawings. The one thing I'd like to point out, just because of what came up in the last presentation, this is the area of the zoning bylaw that we're referencing. Note 7 and 8 have to do with accessory buildings, and if it's less than 15 feet in height, you have a little bit of a different setback. One note here, this is from the building department, is that the description of height is based on the midpoint of the roof. Here's
Excuse me,
another note.
let me just interject. That's not correct. It's to the peak of the roof.
This is off of your town of Cohasset.
It may be, but the zoning bylaws changed about a year and a half ago.
So what I downloaded 5 seconds ago from the town of Cohasset is inaccurate?
I don't know. The bylaws changed. That's all I know. Sorry, but I just wanted to make that clarification point. It's to the peak.
Well, that's problematic. How does one handle this when I am referencing what is on your website from your building department and requested clarification from your building inspector, and then to be told that I'm inaccurate based on the zoning bylaw? Why does the town keep that document in that location?
I wish I knew. I don't know.
Julia, can you help us out here?
So I think we're gonna need to ask for a second piece of the variance, which is, we would also like to get a variance for the height. As I read the zoning, the notification on the town website, and I can tell you, I just downloaded that a few minutes ago to make sure that I had it accurate. I meet all of the requirements from the building department. So if we need to ask for a variance on the height, we'll need to do that as well. So this has gotten a little bit more complicated. I think I'm going to stop there and ask if you have some questions, or if you can help me out here, that would be helpful.
Okay, board members? Who wants to go?
Maybe I could ask just a simple, I hope it's a simple question, and that is, why don't you locate the garage to comply with the side and rear setbacks of 20 feet, and then you don't need a variance?
The main reason for that is this is a small lot. If I were to move this garage an additional 10 feet towards the house, an additional 10 feet towards the right, we would not be able to pull into the garage because of the angles that we'd have to go around the house. So that's primarily the reason for designing it as
And you
this.
can't use that right of way to the north, that comes off the parking lot of the neighboring house. You couldn't access it that way?
The intention of this design is to improve the site. The house currently, we are no longer using the front door as a front door, and the Goings would like to access their house from the easement that they own, versus having to use a right of way that they don't own. So this would just keep all of their activity on their own property versus needing to use a right of way on another property.
Okay, well, I'll turn it over to Dave and Matt and everybody else in just a second, but if you're going to create a nonconformity, which is what you're doing, by locating the garage here, you have to pass the 3 tests of a variance, and you should address that. Those 3 tests of a variance, then you're creating a variance, or a nonconformity, I should say. You're creating a nonconformity, and so you should address those 3, I think, really up front.
So I'm gonna reference the bylaw so that I have that in front of me. But the request for a variance is under, excuse me for 1 second, 12.6.
May I jump in for a moment, Jessica, just to come from an aesthetic viewpoint? The dumpsters are behind the garage, and for us to access the garage using that right of way would be difficult because that's where the dumpsters are located for the condo building next door, to the left of their garage. It's not something, if I can be honest, that if there's a way we can put our garage there so we're not looking at dumpsters, that would be great. So, I mean, just in that sense, to do a variance could be a worthwhile thing for us as the homeowners, but I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I think the problem here, I mean, among other things, there are specific legal criteria to get a variance, and you have to meet each of those criteria with evidence, or we're not allowed to grant a variance. And I understand how it's a lot more convenient to do it this way, given the way the lot's laid out and the way the streets are laid out and everything, but convenience isn't one of the standards that we're allowed to use in evaluating the variance.
Okay, so what you are going to be asking me then is which provisions of the bylaw would involve a substantial hardship, financially or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is, the topography.
And
piece of it.
soil.
And
So
soil.
there has to be something unique beyond the shape of the lot.
Something how that particular lot is unlike others in that zoning district.
Can you clarify? I'm reading the section of your bylaw, and I apologize. This is my first time visiting with Cohasset. I'm very familiar with several towns, but I don't see those specific comments that you're asking for in your
They're in the
12.6.
state, they're in the state zoning enabling act in 40A is what tells zoning boards what criteria they have to apply for variances.
I see. So it's not in your bylaw. I have to go to the state.
Yeah, our
48 to
bylaw just
look
says
at
we
that.
can grant a variance under the right conditions, but the state zoning law is the one that lays out those conditions.
So
Yeah,
in a
actually-
situation where we have a pre-existing non-conforming small lot, is there an opportunity to use a special permit instead of a variance because of the condition of the small lot?
Not if you're creating new nonconformities. If you're extending old nonconformities, then you can do it by special permit. If you're creating new nonconformities, you need a variance.
So if we have a nonconformity of a setback for an accessory structure currently of 6 feet from the side setback, and we want to extend our nonconformity of that 6.6 feet, but improve it, so now that we're at 11 feet, would that be considered a special permit? So what I'm referring to is we currently are over the setback with a shed, which is an accessory structure, and we'd like to rebuild and we'd like to remove that and build a new accessory structure that uses the same setback.
You can't relocate it. You can alter it, but you can't move it to another part of the lot and create a new nonconformity.
Doesn't the nonconformity already exist as 6 feet from the side setback?
You have, yeah, and you can petition us, or you can seek to get approval to modify that structure. But that's not what you're doing. You're seeking approval to create a new structure in a different part of the lot. It's called creating a new nonconformity.
Joanna and Michael, I think I need to ask for a continuance and look at our options. The town has provided information on their website that was inaccurate that we followed.
What suggestions, I mean, are there any suggestions you, the board, could make to us that no?
Yeah, I think a continuance is appropriate, Jessica.
You might want to relook at moving that proposed garage 20 feet over away from both those sidelines. It may be a little more inconvenient for you, but you would be not, you would then be compliant. I mean, as long as you deal with the height issue as well.
Yeah.
Well, the rules for, so this, at this point then, forget this one, that one's out of date, that one's out of date. We don't have any concern if we were to meet a front setback of 30, a side setback of 20, and a rear setback of 20. We could then go to a maximum height of 25, which we are not exceeding at this point anyway. So the only thing we would be, at that point, as you said, we would not need to get any kind of special permit. We could start construction as soon as we got a building permit.
I hate to leap before I think, but I believe you're right. I mean, Dave or Matt, am I?
Yeah, I mean, if everything's conforming, then you don't need any
You don't
relief
need
from the zoning
approval.
board.
All right. Well, I think what we'd like to do is continue to ask for the continuance so that we at least have some
Sure.
options if that's
Sure.
available to us.
Yeah, we're
I'm
not here to play
very
gotcha, don't
disappointed.
get me wrong. I mean,
What's
we're
that?
not here to kind of mousetrap you.
I understand. I'm obviously extremely disappointed that I was asked to,
Yeah,
this
we're going to-
document literally exists on your website right now in the building department.
We will follow that up. The town has an IT department that's supposed to handle these things.
Yeah, that's 2 or 3 years out of date, and sadly, I don't reference, I don't look at that because I know what the bylaws say, so sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, I also, when I saw this, I assumed that it was accurate because this is how most other towns do qualify height, and the International Residential Code uses this definition as well. So I assumed that it was accurate. I am embarrassed that that I was not right about this. Interestingly, I have asked the building inspector and was not told that I was wrong. So, okay, we'd like to ask for a continuance and we'll take a look at what our options are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, if I may interject, I just want to help clarify a few sections of the bylaw just for your reference.
Okay.
So regarding the three criteria for the variances, that is found in section 312.6. So it's basically right out of chapter 40A. It lists the 3 criteria, including the soil conditions, shape, and topography, and the literal enforcement of the provisions, and then the substantial detriment. So you can find those in that section. It's referenced in your application as well. And I can send you the link separately if you have trouble accessing that. Also, I just wanted to clarify, Woody, are you referring to the definition of height in section? Okay, I am seeing that. And I can send you that link as well, Jessica, if you need to review that. John Hallen, the building inspector, he's not on the call tonight, but I can just confirm with him these references that are on the website and get his perspective on if those are outdated and need to be removed. I apologize if they're on the website and they are inaccurate, but I will check with him to see how those stand with the building department.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It is I'm very, very disappointed in that looking on for information from the town, and I did see the definition of height in the bylaw, and I am aware of 12.6. However, when I looked at the definition of height in the bylaw, I then was also able to locate the additional definition of height, which is extremely clear here. Height measurements and this right on your website. So that which also reflects, like I said, what is common in the IRC and what is common in many towns in the state. And the International Building Code uses this definition too, the midpoint of the roof.
Yeah, our definition of height is a vertical distance from the lower of pre-construction grade or finished grade to the highest point of the building roof, or the highest point of any structure other than a building. Pretty clear, but it was changed. It was changed, and you're pointing out something I don't think any of us are really aware of, and that is that the websites have not been changed as the law has changed.
Why did the town change the height?
You have an hour? I can, I don't know, but no, I
I
don't.
mean, it would seem to reason that if the town were to change the height for I'm
Where
I
on the
understand it's time to end this conversation, but I'd like to point out, this structure is a total of 19 feet high, total. And we very specifically made it look to match the existing house and, to be as attractive as we could. A structure that would be 15 feet high, this midpoint line is right there. So that would not be an attractive structure. So potentially when the town decided to change the height to the ridge, they might have considered changing the height of what an accessory structure was closer to the setbacks. In your notes 7 and 8 in your dimensional regulations, because that makes sense proportionally. It's just disappointing that they didn't seem to pay attention to other areas of the height. Again, I don't want to get into a big issue on this. Obviously, you can tell I'm extremely disappointed that I looked at what I thought was accurate and it clearly wasn't. So if we can move forward with a continuance, I appreciate that. And I do want to thank you. I understand your volunteers. I do the same thing locally in Duxbury. And I'm sorry that if I sound a little contentious, that's not my intention. I'm just disappointed.
No, but you understand what our role is, to apply the bylaw. I mean, we weren't involved in crafting it or modifying it, really.
I understand. Yeah. Potentially the planning board should take a look at that.
Well, they did a major overhaul of the entire bylaw, and we are, as we move along here, finding little holes here and there.
Did you find a big hole for us?
All these changes happened in the last 2 or 3 town meetings. So the glitches are starting to show up now.
I'm just surprised that if it changed 2 years ago, that you have a document on your.
Yeah, I don't.
Today.
Where on the website is the document that you were showing?
Hold on a second. Town of Cohasset. Building department. Right here, you zip all the way down. Height, definition, and diagram.
Okay, so
I
that's
really
not
had to
actually,
presume this was accurate.
all right, so that's not actually in the zoning bylaw, that's in the building inspector's site. Okay.
Well, when it is, and when I'm looking for specifics in towns, I typically know
Sure,
that the building department has the most
completely
accurate
understand.
information.
I completely understand how that happened and why you would look there. I'm somewhat comforted that the zoning bylaw itself is actually correct, but this definitely needs to be fixed on the building inspector's site.
Potentially, there's a lot of things on here that.
It's potentially, yeah, and I
reviewed.
think, that's why we have an IT department that's supposed to deal with that kind of stuff, but.
I had difficulty reaching the building inspector to ask the proper questions to get to this point as well. So this may have been something that could have been cleared up long ago, but it was difficult to get anywhere with him. And when I found these things on the website, I assumed I was following the rules.
So if we move it 20 feet and 20 feet, it can be the same height as we've drawn?
You
If
can
I'm
make it
to-
up to, you can make it taller. You could get to 25 feet high.
Okay.
Yeah. And we don't
Is
have
that
to move it
correct?
20. It's already 11 and it's 7. So it would have to move, another
13 and 9, yeah.
8, right.
Yeah. So let's just regroup offline,
Yeah.
Jessica.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, we're disappointed.
Okay.
It's gonna be the prettiest house in town, though. Jessica's a great architect.
Well,
I would still like to-
you've also got a pretty nice site, so.
Yes, we do. We do. And we purchased the house only because or we're allowed to only because we were keeping the original structure. They wouldn't have sold it to us without keeping the original structure, so, which is nice.
Great. Well, we will take any public comments
Thank you.
as well, as part of this, and then we will end up making a motion, to continue the hearing, and you can keep in touch with us. Julia, would they probably, I don't know if they should get your email address if they have any follow-ups, or if you've already been in touch with the applicant, but
I have her email addresses.
Okay.
Julia's been very, very helpful. Thank you, Julia, for all of your help.
Yeah, I can loop you in with John if that's helpful. And if I see him in person, I will double check if he can contact you or myself. And
Thank you.
Thank you all.
and as far as public comment, we have I think one hand raised. Chris, if you could unmute and just identify yourself for the record.
Hi, I'm Chris McDowell. I'm the abutter immediately to the south of here. And so I just had a number of quick questions. It's my first time to this process, so I appreciate the opportunity. And in the future, if I don't know you, the Goings, if you want to knock on our door, ask us any questions, we got a letter in the mail, but yeah, would appreciate if you knock on the door, ask us a bunch of questions and tell us what you're thinking. We don't necessarily have any problems with the garage as detailed, but it sounds like it's going to get revised anyways. I just had quick questions for the board, really. The impervious ground, should that include the paving on the right-of-way? So when I'm looking at the 30% lot coverage, should I include the pavement on the right-of-way access? Is that impervious ground?
Well, whose property is it on?
Yeah.
It is included in our, in the impervious coverage.
Okay, so I was just rough estimating it by the, and I was, yeah, okay. Obviously, I must have something wrong because the right of way is 115 long and 25 wide, and the pavement extends most of the right of way. So that just seemed like a lot of impervious ground. So again, just a clarification, just didn't know how much pavement was going to be behind us.
I think, isn't that?
It's also, that's
to
a
be
gravel,
removed?
that's a gravel road, not,
No, it's-
Not a gravel road, it's paved.
It's paved.
okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at the photo. It looks like it's gravel.
So
Yeah.
Chris, are you just above that road?
Yes, we're into one Spindrift Lane. Yeah, and so and then I guess my questions were, we didn't really have any big questions on the garage and placement, but we were just wondering why you needed to go over 15 feet, but I think we answered that question. And then we had just questions on the setbacks. We were given a document by the town that had the back setback as 30 feet. And on an earlier presentation, that seemed to be what the back setback was on the lot in Forest Notch. But did those change recently to 20 and 20? So side yard is 20 and back is 20. So on that Forest Notch application, it looked like the distance to the back of the lot was 22.5, but they were referencing that they were within the setback, which I'm guessing is the old setback, which was 30. But did they now change to 20 and 20?
Potentially that other lot was not in the residential RB district. There's several different districts. So in RB, we are 20 and 20.
Oh, okay. So, and that again, just to highlight the issues that you were having, Jessica, we were handed a a piece of paper from the town when we went to ask about this property development. And they gave us a piece that said it was 20 and 30 in RB.
That's RC. So somebody in town hall made a mistake.
District RB, and it has rear depth feet is 30. Single family dwelling.
I don't think that changed, did it, Julia?
Well, I would tell you that I just also took this information from today's,
Yeah, I did the same thing, so that's why I had a question.
Is the distinction between the primary dwelling versus an accessory building?
No, it had the same footnotes. Same footnotes where you can go within, I think, well, you know, I'm all new to this, 6 feet, as long as you're not over 15 feet high.
And
But it said,
100 feet back, so, or something.
yeah, and 100 feet back, yeah.
So no, I mean, that doesn't apply, but I've got the 2024 bylaws in front of me that say 20 and 20 in an RB district, 20 side, 20 rear.
All right, so I was working off something wrong on the other way. But that's okay. I went to the website and one of them says 20 and 20, and if 20 and 20 is what we're looking at, that's great.
I don't think that's changed at all in years.
Okay. Well, the town is apparently pieces of paper.
Well, as Jessica said, you've got to be careful about doing comparisons to be sure you're talking about the same zoning district.
No, it says, I'm looking at the piece of paper right in front of me with a highlighted district RB, and it says rear depth feet is 30 with an asterisk beside it. So, yeah. All right, well.
I can't answer that.
If the answer is 20 and 20, that's what we got to. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'd be curious to see where that piece of paper came from.
Did it come off our website? I mean,
No, it came from the package they handed us at the town. And we inquired, we got the letter in the mail, and we went, oh, okay, we'll go to the town and see what they gave us everything that you had filed, so.
So potentially it was an error in the writing of the special permit information. That might have just been an error in I'm helping out the town at this point. I think it's probably just.
And I'm sorry,
Which is fine. Okay, so it's 20 and 20. And then my last question is does that include roof distance too, or is that just to the building? Is it from the side of the
I think
building?
we allow, don't we, it's not 1.5 feet, is it?
Yeah,
It's a few
it's up to 2
overhang.
feet. If you look in the
Oh, up to 2
definitions,
feet,
there's
okay.
in the definitions, there's a definition of permitted projections. And there are certain things that can project up to 2 feet, including eaves and chimneys and things like that.
Okay, great.
Well,
That's all I got.
I'm sorry, we didn't get to meet beforehand.
Sounds great. Knock on our door anytime.
Okay.
Yeah, when the application actually has, I'm just looking at it now. It looks like the application has 30 as the
Might have
as the
been
rear
mine on it
setback,
wrong.
which was probably what he got a copy of.
Well, suffice it to say, we'll have to be sure that the town changes its material. This is embarrassing for the town, not for you.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying that particular reference, though, it would need to be updated on the application of what was submitted to us, but it might be, it's most likely not going to be applicable, depending, but the kind of one that's filled out here.
So you're saying it was filled out at 30?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other public comment? We did receive one emailed public comment. It was in regard to I'll summarize. It was in regard to the easement access and just noting that to date, it's been clear with construction activity. It's been accessible and clear, and that they hoped that that would maintain, you know, the case when the garage construction were to occur. I don't know, Julie, if you have that handy, but you could read the name into record if that makes sense.
I do, yes, I can read into the record. Virginia Jensen, and it was regarding zoning Board of Appeals meeting on March 4th, 2025, 350 Forest Avenue. Dear Julia, we live at 542 Jerusalem Road. There is a private way access road connecting Forest Street and Jerusalem Road. There are 11 households on this private way. 6 live in condominiums and 5 live in houses. This access road borders 350 Forest Avenue. From our perspective, it is important to keep this road clear from all construction vehicles as it provides emergency access to 11 households. So far, this has not been an issue, even though we woke up this time to have been on part of the house adjacent to the private way. Sincerely, Richard and Virginia Jensen. And that was Sunday, March 2nd, 2025.
Okay. Thanks for that. And I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so do we have a motion to continue the hearing for 350 Forest Avenue?
So moved.
Moved. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Nobody else will.
All right, all in favor, David Morris,
Aye.
Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Matt Watkins, aye. Woody Chidick,
Aye.
Michael Dickey,
Aye.
Lee Darst.
Hi.
Okay, great. Thanks for the information, and I'd say probably keep in touch with Julia as well as to what your next steps might be.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Keep shuffling my agenda into my other files, but I know we're on to the deliberation, and then yeah, deliberation of closed meetings, and then the minutes. So that would bring us to 149 King Street. I guess just as a refresher, right, we plan to deliberate on this. It's currently a continued hearing, and depending on the deliberation, we'll either keep it a continued hearing or vote to close it. That sound right to everyone involved?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone like to go first, or want to lead it off, or so the voting members, myself, David, Charlie, obviously it'd be good to get input from everyone. I know I kind of went into the hearings, I'll say very empathetic towards their situation, and pretty in favor of the use. I think it makes sense for the site. Think it's an appropriate use for the site, and probably, like many, just kept looking at the different criteria to see if I could get myself there, with kind of checking those boxes that they were appropriate. And I do think, I will say probably financial hardship did come into play for me as well, when thinking about it, because I think you know, to see the process that the applicant's gone through. The expense related to it might not be something that we typically consider, but I do think that it was unique enough in this circumstance. So we can either go through 1, 2, or 3, but for me, it kind of came down to like really trying to get myself there with the first one. You know, the topography and soil conditions. Went out to the site a few times and was looking around and kind of felt like some of the abutting properties were, you know, somewhat similar in topography. Whether it's a 45-foot grade or a, you know, close to a grade, to me, they looked pretty similar. A lot of the buildings next to it were set back further because of that unique topography. I think like what was presented tonight also showed, you know, that there are 5 properties that are similar in topography in that district. But also took the time to look at, you know, the geotech borings and kind of the analysis and testimony. And I think, you know, they've certainly put their best foot forward in trying to convince us of that piece of it. But I thought maybe, I think I'm there on 2 and 3, and I think on 1, you know, like I wanted to have some deliberation and discussion, because I do go back on 4th, and, you know, is it really unique to the district? I guess if there's 5 different parcels that have something similar. I took some notes tonight though of, you know, it's not just soil, it's not just sand, it's the, you know, the percolation of the water and different components, the perched water, the densified soils. So I think some of our other members could kind of look at that and say that they find it unique. So I guess I'll stop there and say, like, I'm at a point where I'm close to convinced, you know, if I want to hear what other people have to say. I think it's really the topography kind of soil piece that I had a hard time saying, definitely they check that box. So I don't know who wants to go next.
Dave,
I'll
go ahead.
I'll just say, you know, in at least looking at 12.6, you know, and maybe there's, you know, more binding language in, you know, 40A section 10 itself. But, you know, in terms of the soil conditions, shape, topography of the land, it says not affecting generally the zoning district. And you know, I think it, you know, it seems to me that, you know, that abutting land can't help but be similar in virtually all instances to the land that, you know, to a given parcel. Parcel is going to be similar to land, but if you look at that zone, if you kind of zoom out a little bit and look at maybe the zoning district more generally, yeah, that slope is, you know, not representative of the whole district. It is kind of unique for that little part of the district. Obviously, as you say, Matt, not unique to that parcel in and of itself. But I think it's fair to say, at least in my mind, I think it's fair to say that, you know, the topography, it isn't representative of the zoning district in general. So that's how kind of I get over that hump anyway.
And did you get any input on the other 2, or you pretty?
No, I agree with you. I think I think that there's substantial hardship, and that, you know, that the relief can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good. You know, that lot's been empty, you know, as long as I've been in Cohasset, and I think you know, the applicant made some good points that it's the productive uses of that land's pretty limited. And I'll be fair, you know, I'll also be fair. I think that, you know, I think they got a little whipsawed by the town, and I'm sympathetic because of that.
If I could take a contrary point of view, I thought the presentation tonight regarding the first test, soil topography, was really excellent work. But where I sort of go off the rails or deviate is on the hardship issue, use issue. Just statistically, like I counted 53, you know, in section 4.3, 53 different categories of uses. There are many, you know, sub-uses within those categories there, but there are 53 categories listed generally for all zoning districts in town. 11 are not allowed in this district without a variance. 42 are allowed. So that's just shy of 80% of all the listed uses are allowed with generally with some sort of relief required. Special permit, special permit from a planning board, but be that as it may. And hardship has generally been defined as an inability to use a lot for any of the uses or most of the uses permitted in the district. And I think there are an awful lot of uses that could be made of this lot. And the fact that it may not be ideal for a storage facility or whatever is a different issue. I mean, and it isn't, the contrast is not, you know, a self-storage inside versus auto body shop or something. I mean, there's a bunch of uses that could be permitted with special permits. So my concern is that the town, and I can't get into the, or I don't really wish to get into the mindset of a bylaw committee or a planning board or the select board or any of the other boards in town, and including town meeting. They voted to merge the uses and conform to the pre-existing definitions for the old highway business district. Now, did people thoughtfully do this? Did they do this out of ignorance? I have no idea. All I know is that within the year, the town voted to say no on storage units without a variance. And to then say, well, the town didn't mean it, or they didn't know what was the townspeople didn't know what was going on. I have a hard time making that supposition. That could be true. It could be true, and this could be a very fine use of the property, but the town voted at town meeting, and I have a hard time going against that. And if somebody wanted to take us to task, let's say we approved this and as a variance, and somebody wanted to make an issue, I think they would have a very strong case that we made an incorrect determination.
Yeah, the only thing that muddies that at all is so Tom did say in his presentation publicly that they're eliminating that use because it wasn't a use that we commonly see in town. But he did follow it up by saying we have one that exists and one that was just approved, so I think he's saying there weren't going to be any more of these, but you could argue that people thought there were two approved, I did watch that tape to kind of see how that was presented. But I understand your point on different uses as well. I mean, you could have a craft shop there, you could have the smaller uses that could fit at the building, but I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there are 42 out of 53 uses are allowed with some sort of approval. almost all of them. I mean, 6, I think I counted, were just as a matter of right, but that's not a big deal.
But I was mindful, you know, I think what led me to that tape, was one of your comments in the earlier, hearings where you said, you know, kind of who are we to overturn what the town voted for at town meeting, saying we don't want any of these. So, you know, I only add that in that when they said we don't want any of these moving forward, they also said that there were 2 that were approved, you know.
Well, Tom said that, you said, okay, I mean, I didn't listen to the tape, I will buy that, but I don't know, I have a hard time. You know, if this had been some sort of a 30-year-old thing, I mean, you know, it might have made a difference to me, I don't know, but this is within a year. And it was specifically said in the warrant, because I went to the warrant, I didn't read I didn't see the tape, Matt, so I defer to you. But the warrant said that all the provisions of the Highway Business District will now apply to, or will all be merged, will all be intact, and anything that deviated with the light industry or technology would be subsumed within the Highway Business District. So I don't know, did people study uses, 53 different use categories? I have to say, I kind of doubt it. But you had a committee, you had a consultant, this Judge Judith. I mean, there were people who were looking at this. I don't know, Dave, do you have a point of view, or Lee, or
No, Charlie.
Charlie? No?
Yeah, who wants to go next?
Uh,
And Adam, I do see you have your hand up. I was gonna say,
I,
you know, I did want to hear from our
Well, Charlie is speaking, I think.
board members, on the deliberation and unless
I go along with the soil experts that I do not feel I'm an expert in that subject. They seem to cover that quite thoroughly, so that in my mind they get by the first criteria. I don't think this building is going to do any irreparable harm to the town or the district, so I get by that one. Now, I know my own self, and going to the town meeting, you don't have all of these fine points figured out, and I don't think the committee did either. So, and I do think there's some equity involved, in my mind at least, that these people went ahead with the project, and therefore I would grant a variance in this case.
Thanks, Charlie. Either David or Lee.
I'm still very troubled by this, primarily by the town meeting vote. I'm also, I think there's a little bit of a backwards analysis of the hardship. It's
Excuse me, David, could you speak up a bit?
Sure, I'm sorry. It seems to me that there are permitted uses that could be on this property. So I don't think that the property itself is of no value, absent a variance. I think that it's true that the property would be more valuable with a variance and with this particular project, but I think that's looking at it backwards. I'm also, I mean, one of the elements of the variance is that it doesn't derogate from the bylaw. And to grant a variance on a use that was specifically eliminated by town meeting less than a year ago seems to be exactly a substantial derogation of the bylaw. And I do understand that there's a lot of special circumstances here. I'm very empathetic with everything that's happened with the applicant and with the whole process. But I'm also very cognizant of what our authority is here and what we're required to look at and what we're required to consider, and what our role is. And I don't feel like it's our place to evaluate what town meeting thought or didn't think or knew or didn't know. The fact is, they passed the amendments to the bylaw. The amendments to the bylaw made this particular use not permitted. It's just not permitted in this zone. And I would prefer to see the applicant go back to Springtown meeting and ask for a zoning change. And I know that it would affect the entire zone and might lead to some unwanted results. But I would rather have the town say, yeah, it's okay to have a storage facility there, than have us say that it's okay to have a storage facility there when the town has already said no. So I can't tell you how sympathetic I am and how I feel there were a lot of opportunities to have this problem avoided. But we are where we are. And I think it's important for us to do our job according to the law consistently. And I don't see this fitting through any exceptions.
Thanks, David.
And I do feel like a skunk at a garden party.
There's I guess we got some feedback from board members. I do see Adam has his hand up. So do we think it's appropriate? I guess can hear from Adam.
No, thank you, Mr. Watkins. We're going to request a further continuance. I would remind the board that VHB did address all of the specific uses in their exhibits, and we are prepared to talk to each and every one of those uses as not being feasible on this site. Whether that moves the needle, I do not know, but we have that information. It's been presented to the board. Obviously, we didn't present that information as clearly, but we've gone through that analysis. Whether we can address Chair McMorris's concerns, I do not know. Every variance results in a derogation of a zoning bylaw. That's black letter law. Now, obviously, we can't compel the zoning board to grant a variance, but that's the nature of the beast. That's why this relief is written into the zoning act. And to have a blanket rule that under no circumstance will this board ever grant a variance is troubling, because that eliminates that form of relief that was written into the statute. So again, I don't want to keep the board any later. I think we've proven each and every prong of that test. I was sincere when I said that, and we've worked very hard to do it. I'm a little bit troubled that we didn't make our point clearly, that we looked at each of those uses. And you need to, again, we didn't do a good job of doing this, but all of these unique conditions create such an additional cost that you can't have a small, retail facility there. We can do this exercise, and Jesse can do this for each and every one of both the allowed uses and the special uses, is that it is completely uneconomic. And if the board's not going to consider variances, then I guess the town's going to have a vacant lot there for the foreseeable future. But Jesse, I hope I didn't overstep my bounds here, but I think that's the only choice we've got.
No, I mean, we certainly would like a continuance. I was also sincere that, we appreciate the questioning and the comments, but as we go and do further information and further analysis, we're trying to be cognizant of the board's time. But as Adam mentioned, we've gone through each of these individual uses. Prior to doing self-storage, this is not my only foray into commercial real estate. I work for a large asset manager of mixed-use shopping centers, have a keen knowledge and awareness of what makes a project viable and what is typical both within the corridor and what would be feasible within the site. And when you're dealing with site work costs of a premium just of $200, $300 a foot in a market that has available retail space that is not being leased at an average rate of $27, $28 a foot. We haven't gotten into typical site work costs, the stormwater management, utilities, and then you also have a building that would ultimately need to be constructed. We're confident in the facts of the case, and I appreciate everything that these boards do, Cohasset in particular. It's difficult, and use variances are supposed to be difficult, but they're not supposed to be impossible. And I think we've done quite a bit of analysis, and we want to continue to pursue this project because we have ultimate confidence in what we can do. And as Adam mentioned, the variance, the relief is there, we believe, for a reason. And this is not just a coincidence that this site is well suited for this use because it was permitted before. There's a whole host of reasons why it sat vacant and why we were the ones that over time on a 25-year-old vacant lot were the ones able to find land value and move forward the seller. So obviously I'm frustrated and disappointed that we haven't come to a resolution yet. I certainly have the utmost confidence, that if we can continue to state our case, that there is opportunity here. So we're hopeful that you'll continue to consider us and, continue the application or potentially even ask more questions of us tonight. We're certainly available and prepared. Thank you.
I would like to see your analysis of alternative uses. And I know you wanted a sense of what everyone was thinking, so that's a sense of what I'm thinking. I would like to think some more.
Thank you, Chair Rick Morris. I was referring to actually the specific uses are called out in the appendices to the VHB report where they analyze sewer and traffic for each of all those uses. But again, we'll make this more clear for the board.
And we're happy to detail them. If you're looking for a report individually, we can go compile that. I'm available to speak tonight. Mr. Chittick obviously mentioned, auto repair as a potential use for the site. That obviously has its limitations and its complications. Certainly if we go and look at auto repair, what's permitted there is 2 bays based off our septic. There is a 2-bay auto repair facility in Cohasset already. So that they can operate, but that property was purchased for $840,000 less than 18 months ago, which is less than what the site work cost would be to deliver. So you're looking at a replacement cost analysis of people are able to buy these operating businesses materially less than what it would cost to develop. And then you add in different layers there that's a special permit use. Obviously, the criteria for special permit you guys are all very well aware of that and well informed, but one of those is to be harmonious and compatible with the neighboring uses. And I think it's important to mention that when we went in front of the planning board, sorry, they were very, very interested and focused on ensuring that nothing that we did would cause a disturbance to the residential community behind us. So they had us take action to lower our light emittance, prove that the sound was low. And for an auto repair facility, those typically aren't things that go hand in hand.
Yeah,
So
I simply used that because one had existed. I mean, not that I don't. No,
No,
I think you guys frankly have done an excellent job at analysis and in many respects, I wish there had been more use of special permits rather than just a blanket prohibition. Which but I wasn't, there was a group that looked at that and opted otherwise.
and I didn't mean to belabor that specific point. I'm just showing a level of analysis that we've done on each of these uses and understanding, when we do come back, if you'll allow us, that's what we'll be providing to depict, okay, let's take a look at these individually. What is the typical square footage requirement? How is this performing in the district? What are the concerns and inability to, ultimately develop these? So we strongly believe in our analysis and we believe in the case. So if y'all will continue to consider, we certainly want to do
I
our
think
best
you
to
probably
move
have a
forward.
sense, and I'm actually an associate member, so I don't even get a vote, but I think you probably have a sense from the board that we don't have it in for your project. But there's the confluence of timing and a change in the bylaws that measured months, not years, and it's awkward.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, I was just rereading that third criteria again. But yeah, I think obviously procedurally we're a little bit debunked there, but I guess I'll ask others. I mean, it would be kind of an appropriate just next step to continue it, or is there any more value here? And because I'm just trying to think through, like on the deliberation front, maybe we wouldn't reopen and kind of start to, I don't know if we take advantage of that we're in deliberation to talk through what the boards, I
Well,
mean,
they have
they have the right to continue it. Yeah, I know.
they have requested to continue to provide more information, and again, I see no reason not to agree with them. I see no reason to cut this off now. If they can make the case that there's only, there's, a use, a use that is about the only one that makes sense. I don't mean technically, but makes sense, then let's hear them out. I guess I'm just looking for some way to sort of if you will, override a town meeting vote that was held within the year.
And Mr. Chidick, that's the function of a variance and these unusual circumstances.
I understand that as well.
And I think you've in many ways, I mean, Jesse's and you both have dealt with the issue of, we've looked at this. There are other uses that may appear viable on paper, but they don't stand up to analysis. I think that would help us a lot.
Mr. Chair, we're prepared to do that. We will address each and every use in the zoning district.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so we're continued, right? Already.
Yep. Okay,
Take a vote on the continuance, right?
We already did.
also we
Oh, we
did,
did? Oh, okay, sorry.
like as part of the initial hearing.
yeah, right.
And then I'm just taking a look, we didn't have any other closed hearings tonight. So that would just bring us to the meeting minutes from January 7th.
If I may interject, there is a hand raised in the attendees, Paul Davis.
Yeah, I guess I'll defer to Woody and David too. I'm not opposed to hearing any more public comment. I just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves in any trouble. It is an open hearing still, right? Because it was continued. So that's appropriate to do. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're fine.
All right, Paul.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes, and I don't mean to make your night any longer. I just wanted to point out that you're mentioning the town hearing, the town meeting vote as being like a mandate for non-storage. They were told that this building would be built. It was already permitted, not just approved, permitted. So they weren't voting against self-storage in and of itself. So I just wanted to make that point clear that it is a gray area where you say that I understand you don't want to go against the mandate of a town meeting vote, but how it was prefaced by Tom Callahan that this has already been permitted, they expected this to be built when they made their vote. So like I said, I don't want to make your night any longer. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would you mind if I ask a quick question, just for clarification? On the administrative end, so the date of the decision would be 100 days from filing. So does the request to continue waive that deadline for the 100 days to file the decision?
So Ms. Gillis, we're happy to execute a formal extension of any of the deadlines to facilitate a decision here. So I can send you a letter to that effect.
Okay, thank you.
You just, if you would be so kind as just to tell me how long you want an extension and I'll provide that.
To the next public meeting, I'm guessing, so April 1st. Because the 100 days ends March 14th.
If I might suggest it, I mean, if the board's going to be prepared to issue a decision on the, you said first, is that correct?
You give us 60 days.
Yeah, I was going to suggest an additional period of time. But your next meeting is on April Fool's Day?
Oh,
yes.
There is a certain irony.
I'm not sure I would call it irony, Mr. Chittick. I feel foolish enough.
I'll join you.
Okay, any other comments, or should we move on to the minutes? Okay, we'll
Yeah.
move on to the
Thank you. Good night.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It was an excellent presentation tonight. You guys.
Thank you.
We have the meeting minutes of January 7th that Julia drafted. Does anyone have any feedback or edits on the minutes? Or does anyone have a motion to
I couldn't even find a typo.
accept them?
Motion to approve, I make a motion to approve the minutes of January meeting.
Second,
Moved and seconded. David McMorris,
aye.
Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Woody Chidick,
Aye.
Lee Darst,
Aye.
Michael Dickey.
Aye.
Yeah, Julie, I noticed, I don't know, it's an off, well, you're doing such a great job, but maybe you shouldn't tweak it, but I've noticed in some of my meetings lately that are on, well, I guess it's more on Teams, they're using Copilot to take all the notes, and it's been putting out some pretty impressive stuff, like, you know, AI notes essentially.
Yeah, I haven't been utilizing that, but it's definitely something to look into just to kind of get the main points in there and then refine as I go along. But yeah, the power of AI.
Yeah, the next item is that our next zoning board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 1st. I guess the only discussion there would be, I know we chatted about whether we're gonna do like one meeting a quarter or whatnot in person. I don't know if we wanted, I think there was some discussion as to it might not be on a Tuesday though, if it was in person because of the hybrid piece of it. So do we want to stick with the April 1st date and we'll kind of target something with more lead time for if we did do an in-person one? Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Guess that's a wrap.
I have one thing, Julia. Can
Yes.
you or Cassandra get John Hallen or whoever together with the IT guy and get these things straightened out? Because that really was embarrassing, and it costs, I'm sure it costs the applicant money to have to go, you know, have them draw this up thinking the law is one thing and it turns out it's something else. I mean, the bylaws, I think, are now pretty well put together. I think you did a really good job of getting everything up to date, but all this other stuff's got to get cleaned up.
Yeah, absolutely. I will contact John tomorrow and see if they can get that straightened out on the building department's website. As for the zoning bylaw, I know the clerks had provided us confirmation that it is the most up to date. So the zoning bylaw is all set, but yes, I will contact John.
Okay, great, thank you.
Do we have an IT department? I mean, I don't mean that in a snarky
yeah,
way.
we
I
got-
just don't know.
We got people doing everything.
Yeah, we do. I just don't know who maintains the building department website. I know I maintain the zoning board of appeals page. But I can reach out to whoever maintains that information and see if they can update that with John's permission.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
pretty
thanks.
embarrassing, yeah.
Okay. Well, good seeing everyone, and we'll make maybe we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second? Moved and seconded. David McMorris,
Aye.
Charlie Higginson. It's muted.
He's
Matt Watkins.
muted.
I
Michael,
saw him wave. We'll take that as a yes.
Michael Dickey,
Aye.
Woody Chidick,
Aye.
Lee Darst.
Aye.
Great. Thanks. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Good night.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.